Welcome to Thinking Through the Darkness, a Lore by Spec podcast, with me, your host, Spec. This is a podcast where we talk through all of the pre-production that goes into making the theories that you see on the Lore by Spec channel and its associated channels. Let's get the shilling out of the way first. If you haven't gone and subscribed and liked and commented on the videos on Lore by Spec on the YouTube channel, please go ahead and do that now. That's one of the best ways that you can support me. This podcast is also available anywhere that you can find podcasts. So if you are listening, if you could like the podcast and maybe leave a little review, that does wonders for the algorithm on the podcast side, which really helps. And if you want to help support this podcast, this is the only one that currently doesn't use free tools. And since it's a paid thing, if you have the means to contribute to this, the link for this is in my description for my Ko-Fi. This helps me keep the light on and pay for all of the things that go into making this podcast a quality project. Today's podcast, I want to take it in a slightly different direction than what we normally kind of talk about, which is theories, theory crafting, and all the stuff that goes into it. I want to take some time to talk about what I hope we'll see in the future. Because if Kingdom Hearts has this opportunity in front of them right now to reinvent the franchise from the ground up in this new arc, to take it in a completely different direction from what we expect and what we anticipate and what we've seen, what we've known before. What would I want that to look like from a fan perspective? And I think what I'd want is something that I don't think a lot of people will expect from me to say, but I think the series could do with really slowing down the pace of the games and really take some time to not necessarily abandon everything that's come before, but give some space to other mechanics, other elements of storytelling, and other ways that we could revitalize the series. Like, to me, I want there to be a blend of the more open world sequences that we've seen in the likes of Final Fantasy 15, but blended with Persona. I want there to be a deliberate pause because I actually think it's really necessary for the franchise that Sora has to sit with what's happened and the new reality that he's now facing. Because, let's face it, this is meant to be unreality for him. This is meant to be something completely different. This is meant to be something completely unique. And I think it's a good opportunity and probably a necessary opportunity for the franchise to go completely left field, to go completely out of the box with it. Because not only does Sora need time to sit and adapt in that new environment, but also to really kind of lay out for us and leave enough room for telling us what this arc is going to be now, what direction we're going into. Because the first game in this next arc, I'd say it has to do a lot of heavy lifting, but it certainly can't make the same steps that Kingdom Hearts 1 made, right? It can't assume that there's not going to be a sequel to this if you were prefacing this as this is the next step in a saga. You can assume that there's not going to be a huge amount of people who are coming into this not knowing any from the original games. And even if they are coming into this fresh, this gives the franchise a chance to reset itself in some ways, to reduce or get rid of a lot of the ambiguity, a lot of the repetition, a lot of the previous tropes, and take the opportunity to dismantle. Something that's interesting for me to consider is something at the end of Melody of Memory. I think it was at the end of Melody of Memory where Master Yanfit Sid asks Mickey, or maybe it's the end of Greenlight, asks Mickey to go to Scala Kyle, meaning it's a real place, but also quite likely not the place, not the Scala that we ended up going to, or the fight with Xehanort, because, well, I mean, we did see it through a battle gate. I don't think it was specifically the real Scala. It was probably just a memory or a recreation of the most important place to Xehanort. But it shows that Scala does still exist in this current timeline. Now, how they managed that is interesting, because reintroducing Scala kind of defeats two different purposes in my mind, right? Because if Scala was always accessible, and there was always other Keyblade wielders to come and help in this fight against the darkness with Xehanort, then why did we never call them? Why did Yen Sid never reach out to any of the masters that still exist in Scala? Right? It's an odd thing to say that the search would begin in Scala, because it either implies that, like I said, that it does exist, or that Mickey has some way of accessing a battle gate that happened through connecting to Xehanort's heart. We know from the end of 3 is dead. So how exactly are you going to end up back at Scala? But that might be where I feel a lot of the Kingdom Heartsy groundwork is going to end up getting done. I'd say that's where a lot of where we're going to kind of draw the line of what did happen, what doesn't happen, what is going to be carried over, what isn't going to be carried over. It's all going to be in that opening section, I'd say, for Mickey and Scala. But I want there to be a complete flip side to Sora's existence in Quadratum. And I do want it to be quite persona based. I want him to have to get a job to pay for his apartment with Strelitzia. I want him to realize or come to terms with the notion that he, in many ways, has lost access to his Keyblade. Yeah, he tries to summon it and nothing happens. I want there to be that level of discomfort and growth for him where he has to understand what life needs to look like now in order for him to persist, you know? And have it be kind of Persona S, I guess, where he'll then maybe even earn back Keyblade powers in Quadratum through, I mean, Persona used different variations of castles and dimensions, but it would be important that we use those kind of distortions as being a way for him to be reintroduced as to what the wibbliness looks like in Quadratum. Because what I fear will end up happening from a visual distinction part is that you can't make this whole be about him going to this other universe and making it distinct that no one else can swallow him, that, you know, and making it such a big deal that nobody can go and bet it. And that if it just doesn't work like that, you can't simply travel to go and get him. Even the extent to which Riku has had to go and find a portal to get there is hugely convoluted. So to have the same sort of system as Quadratum being a hub to which he then goes out and explores doesn't really work for me, because how do you make that distinction then between the reality of the Kingdom Hearts universe that, which is not reality, if cross-functioning, acting the same way? The dissonance there that needs to be addressed. That's really important, but I can't quite. Because I don't think that you could have knowledge of that as a whole. I don't think you could have that on reality as a whole. That should function in the same way that the previous worlds have worked, because then it just becomes functionally identical to navigating in the realm of light. And I don't think you can do that without consequence. It makes me think that maybe I'm not going to wind up staying that long in Quadratum. That, or we're going to be staying in unreality for a very long time. I feel like it's either one of the two. We're either going to be locked in to this unreality for a very long time, or this is just the post stage until normal service resumes. But I think having such a change on visual style, of mechanics, of that sort of day-night cycle that you have in Persona, of you are inherently just a school kid who's going to school, you get a part-time job, you study, you go and go on a few dates, go to the cinema. I think that's going to be so important for Sora's development, Sora's personal. I actually think it's probably necessary for his development that he has some sort of Persona-ish arc in this, where he learns that much like, because there's a lot of similarities between, especially Persona and Kingdom Hearts as a franchise, but he's developing connection with his new friends or his new circle that he will inevitably find in Quadratum. So of course it will. I don't think he's just going to end up with Strelitzia. And that's it. The guy's a magnet. He will naturally make more friends, And so the new unit he finds itself, and that being a deliberate and intentional system, would be astonishing. Like, imagine him going to a park and seeing somebody walk a dog by a lake that happens to have ducks in it, and he gets flashbacks of Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and 3. And his adventures with dog. And him, having those so important beats of, I miss my friend. Of seeing somebody in a pink dress and short hair, where he has to double take it because it looks like Kairi, only for the person to turn around. It's not Kairi at all. I think he needs those moments. I think he needs those beats. I think he needs that emotional growth and emotional felt. Not so that he, in many ways, understands the impact of what he's done in Kingdom Hearts 3, but to make peace with the choices that he's made. But also to have moments where he is very much alone. I want moments for Sora where he is sitting in his flash on his own and he's like, what is like what is this? What are we doing? And he has wrestling with something that he has not been left sit with for this entire series, and that is loneliness. That is isolation. Ever since this boy has turned what 14, 15, he has always had a dog and lapdog. He has not done anything else in his life except that dog and lapdog. And now he's on his own. And he's reckoned with the fact that his life's his own now. And yes, by all means, we can have sections of what Kairi's around what Mickey's doing, around what the others, should they have a place in this, are doing in the background. Like, I would love to see what the gummy phone has turned into. Because there's going to be no doubt there's going to be some sort of product placement thing there, or some sort of phone, and that it will turn into a normal ass smartphone. Like, could you imagine? Look, it might have been an Easter egg all along. Don't you remember the fake Instagram accounts that used to appear in Kingdom Hearts 3 with like everybody seeing cross avatars on screen stuff? Look, can you imagine Sora trying to navigate Instagram? Trying to navigate the internet? This boy barely understood how to work a phone like 3 months ago. Like how on earth are you going to tell this kid, hey, okay, you just press a button and now you officially get all of the information that's ever been known to humanity, that's ever been known to man. Good luck. I think that would be hilarious and also so necessary for him. I don't know how much of the foretellers or the masters that we're actually going to see in 4. Not a case of I don't know if they're going to tell or not, because I think that they will. If they're smart, what they'll do is they'll have each of the previous foretellers be the antagonist, for want of a better explanation, for each of the games in the arc. So that will all teach him a specific lesson, because it's a little known fact that a lot of the foretellers' names are actually derived from the 7 deadly sins. So if this is going to be an exercise in teaching Sora the challenges with wrath, envy, sloth, gluttony, and the only ones that don't appear at the end being Ava of hope, I think it would be a really interesting arc, because not only would those foretellers be instilling in Sora something that he doesn't natively have, say, outside of a bit of wrath, but would challenge Sora in a way of more deeply identifying in himself who he is. And I think that's so necessary for Sora in this game that's meant to be him really questioning who he wants to be. What does he want to be now that he's done the big thing? how does the next chapter of his life start? Where he is, for want of a better understanding about his other, his life gets to be whatever he makes it out to be. Yeah. I think it would be amazing if Riku gets to him by the end, and it's like, hey, we found a way for you to come home, bro. It's all good. And he's like, nah, no thanks. No thanks, I don't wanna. And Riku not knowing what to think about. Being like, what do you mean you don't, what do you mean you don't want to come home? And Sora's like, I'm happy here. Like, I'm content here. You know, I appreciate that you came all this way, but I have a chance to have a normal life now where I don't have to be king. I don't have to wield the Keyblade. You were always the one. You was meant to be the Keyblade master. In fact, out of the two of us, you are the only Keyblade master. So I can leave this. I'm good. I did what I had to do. And Riku kind of being like, I don't know, that was never on the cards. I ever thought that want, you wouldn't want this. And I think that would be such a fabulous thing to dive into from Sora's perspective. What it would be like to just not want this anymore. To be like, I have given up so much, I have sacrificed so much. I'm good. I'm out. I'm done. And subsequently, that maybe it doesn't center around Sora for a little bit if the choice is that he wants to be the protagonist of this next saga anymore. Do I think ultimately that they'll shift Sora being the protagonist to somebody else? No. Nomura had always said that the numbered entries would always be Sora facing, right? So there's no way that ultimately Sora doesn't end up doing a Noctis, I suppose, in terms of being King of Kings. I do think that would be where Yuzora himself would be tying into making that past impossible for Sora, where, getting to a point of where we fast forward a certain length of time for him, because what? Been over a year in the realm of light, but it's only been 7 days in Quadratum and Sora first wakes up, right? For a decent chunk of time to have passed in reality and in Quadratum. For Sora to be comfortable to say, nah, I don't want that life anymore. Only to then be kind of pulled back in by Yuzora to be like, well, tough, Yuzora's influx point makes his presence very hard to determine whether or not he is going to wind up being an antagonist or not. I don't see him being a full-time antagonist. I don't see him being the bad guy. He might be the person who ends up supporting Sora in his magical rehabilitation and his ability to regain his powers. But I don't see him being an antagonist traditionally. It's far more likely that the Foretellers are going to be the antagonists of this arc. As I've said, or in other theories, and I'll say it again. The Master of Masters has only done this, really, to isolate Sora. He's isolated a select group of people for this specific life that he's currently playing in the only realm that he can successfully do it in. And keep in mind, he's been plotting this for millennia. He has known the events for millennia. That's a very long time to be playing and to be waiting. So, kind of what I hope we'll see. I do want to go to other worlds and keep in the same rotation, I guess, of tradition Kingdom Hearts games where we do go to different worlds and we do experience different things. But I want it to be a bit more strategically done on reality. Because if we're going to, or if we're going to other worlds that are more human, per se, right? I can't figure any other Disney properties off the top of my head where people still look like people except for Star Wars. But you understand what I mean, right? Then I want there to be a mechanic that's appropriate on reality, not just here's a special ship akin to a gummy ship where we do the exact same things as before, right? Because that just feels a bit cheap. Feels like you could be a bit more creative about it. And well, maybe instead not on white, it's Kairi who goes with Donald and Goofy, or it's Mickey, Donald and Goofy, or together for a hot minute. And then when Kairi's finished her training, it's Kairi and Lee who go off by themselves for a bit. Like I want us to have different experiences with different groups of people finding out different things and embracing different mechanics at the same time. Like I think it like bring back old Trinity Landets with Mickey, Donald, and Goofy. But it's just a really amped up version of Set of Flare. You know, it's not baby's first Trinity Landet, it's something cataclysmic. How wild would that be to see? Where they just nuke a planet. Like that would be wild. I would be so up for that. I would so be up for the three of them pulling a spell out of their ass that's akin to something being more powerful than Zeta. Or another Zeta paid spell. Amazing, incredible. Take that for free. Like a Zeta Trinity, Zeta Limit would be incredible. Like I'd love Kairi to unlock forms. Like how cool would that be in the midst of her training? She unlocks the ability to have KH2 forms. And that's her shtick now because she's managed to pull all of the powers from Sora. Because we've seen her summon Sora, essentially. We're waking up that power from the heart of Sora to fight Xehanort in Melody of Memory. Wouldn't it be cool if she developed the ability to have her own KH2 forms? Like, that'd be so sick. I'd love to see that. Just have something that's hers, like her version of it. She's surrounded with flowers, like her buffer is her flowers. Like, you know, I just think there's so much that you can run with in terms of staying with Kairi for a bit and really fleshing out what her Keyblade powers are meant to be. And whether she is able to inherit or not any of that specific magical ability from Naminé. That'd be cool too. It would also be going to think, oh, there's a Keyblade holder. I think that's it. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. I understand she's a witch and technically has her own stuff, but if Kairi's able to Keyblade because she was bequeathed, if Sinsel have a Keyblade, you could bet your ass Naminé should have a Keyblade. You bet your ass Naminé should have a Keyblade. We've doubted to Naminé a bit in the last podcast. I won't go on to better, but we could do with some time spent with her if she's being brought in, sitting with the reality of her powers and the mechanisms around her powers, really seeing what we can put into place, maybe create a road that brings Sora home. That'd be pretty cool. If we could see her powers being explored and amplified. Maybe she studies under Yen Sid. She doesn't necessarily need to go into full Keyblade. Maybe Yen Sid takes her on as being an apprentice due to her own magical powers. That would be pretty cool if everyone is focusing on Keyblade learning. I'm just saying, I'm just throwing it out there. I just think that would be pretty cool. Just saying, I think that would be pretty cool. I'm not necessarily sure, certain, or I think it's necessary that we bring in the Twilight Time crew all the way by at this point. Do I think they should make an appearance in some form? Yes. Do I think it's weird though? No. Now that I think about it, Xian, Axel, and Lee are all their own people and all representing people. And Harry makes far more sense than Goofy to go off and find more information and do whatever if the king's already in Scotland. Because then there's still units of 3. I'm not sure what the Twilight Town trio or the Wayfinder trio would have to do. Like, do they have anything to do with this saga? And this is an advocacy for them to do then. I'm just thinking plot-wise, if we're moving into a new saga, right? And we need to make room for a new cast of players, then we do need to leave some people behind. It depends heavily on that retconning of them, in my opinion, because the character files has dropped his participation in this for his events of Union Cross tied to different line. So my thoughts is that they dropped it from character files with Strelitzia, and they probably have retconned this notion of bringing him in as a player in this saga, certainly for Cage 4. Maybe not for further games, certainly for Cage 4. Because there would naturally be tension there for Strelitzia if there was ever going to be a point of Ven and Strelitzia meeting onward. Right? Because how awkward would that be if you turned around? Because she has no idea that it was the darkness in Ven that kind of possessed and murdered Eliza. She just saw him and was murdered. She was the last thing he saw, right? So there's tension there for me. If you bring Ven into 4, then that tension will still exist. But if you've already retconned it, they have in character files, right? In the more modern branches and modern interpretations of the franchise, that notion has already been largely dropped. So if that's largely already been dropped, And it's likely that that's where they're parking the Wayfinder trio and the Twilight Town crew, that they are the participatory in the upcoming four. Which makes sense because I understand for a lot of history you had to resolve a lot of the threats. It was ultimately very necessary and emotionally satisfying that we got the endings that brought us for Xehanort and Terra. Like, they were very necessary as players, right? But it also leaves us open because Namora has no problems at all with the Starbucks, right? It was us, those players, who struggled with resolution of letting them go. Do I think walking into this saga, which is potentially going to be his last real kind of participation in this series, he's going to be coming off to part of not eating. He wants to eat at this point. So I do think I do think it's necessary, like, story for the Twilight trio to, and I think it's probably appropriately right. But if they're not bringing Ven into this saga to have this confrontation, not just of a Foretellers, but Strelitzia's murder, dear, murder, and then it's probably more appropriate that they get pitched if they pivoted on the idea of that being a keystone in changing how we think about and how we view other people. Like, would it be great to have a cinematic where we get this perspective of the last thing Streliza sees, and it's just a vacant Ven that, like, summons his Keyblade, and we're all and like anybody who knows is very aware that it's Ven, and that's the last thing that Streliza sees, and she has to have like a PTSD kind of flashback of who killed her. And so that I think that would be such a moment for the franchise, such a moment for people, and absolutely, like, I could kick down the door of the comments being like, I told you, it was a real thing, I don't care. And I would Kool-Aid Man through the door of my comments. I would even tripping and Kool-Aid Man through it. Like, you have no idea. I think it would be a real moment, and maybe if we had that moment of the last thing that Streliza sees, and then killing her, that then we get a scene in Land of Departure where something pulls out of Ben's hand, and Jersey's like, "So what's wrong?" Ben's like, sick his hands, being like, "I feel like I've done something awful," or something like that. And then being like, and then getting cold by like her thing, things just continuing. But him like looking back to whatever fell out of his hand, or maybe it was something breaking. Like he was trying to put it away and smash it on the floor instead. I think that would be such a cool sequence to, like, for the people who know, they know. And for the people who don't, they don't. That'd be such a good way to tie in the narrative elements of Union Cross that, like, that board does not have the time in the first game to bring the entire backstory of Four. Like, they don't. where is they going to point out? But certainly have seen young Master Xehanort in those sketches that Nomura said. So he's going to be. I know he's going to be there. Most people who are in this depth know that he's going to be there. The question is, what? Is he just going to be a cameo? Is he going to just be watching? Is this going to be a case of who watches the Watchmen? It'll be interesting to consider how he gets. Technically, he is he's there, so and pretty sure that Liza just describe this as an after. It just makes that exists there. But it is very much a young version of him who exists there. It's not old, nor is it certainly old. Young Xehanort. Maybe you get to choose if you died naturally. Maybe you get to choose what age you come back at. I don't know. That's an interesting thing to think about too. I don't think he more like a role that is, and I'm trying to choose the word active here very deliberately. I don't think he will have a lot to do in terms of the overall plot. I feel like he will be a witness. I think he will be there to experience. I don't think he'll be there to get involved. If you think about it, if you are out in the rain, if you have an umbrella and you're out in the rain, you're kind of just there witnessing. You're not really doing anything, right? You're out and about, you're watching, you're experiencing something. You're not necessarily there to do or action. I feel like Xehanort might act in many ways for when those masters reveal themselves to be sort of the thing of you may think that you have gotten away with everything that you are doing, but you have failed in one aspect, and that is to remember that someone has witnessed the events of all that you've done, and that's me, because you've given the key. I witness all of your atrocities throughout the millennia, and I do think that that's one with everyone. And I think that will be the role that he will take, to be like, I am just going to be present for all of us, and I will fulfill my own, open my own desires in this. I do not think, and my theories have gone to talk about this before, that I don't believe that Xehanort end goal really got achieved in the Darkseeker side. I think ultimately what Xehanort wanted to achieve will end up getting completed by the end of Lost Masters, be it through Sora or be it through other means. I think that ultimately Xehanort will end up winning, but it won't be because of what we had previously been led to believe. But that's okay. I want to leave it for this particular podcast. I feel like I've been chatting for long enough for today. This has been Thinking Through the Darkness, a Lore by Spec production with me, Spec. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me today. Just as a reminder, don't forget, if you haven't followed the Lore by Spec YouTube channel, go ahead and subscribe. It's free there. If you haven't taken the time to review the podcast or dropped a like and a comment, those really help too. And if you ever feel inclined to help me keep the lights on over here, head to Ko-Fi, which is in my description. to help support the podcast. Once again, thank you all so very much for listening, and I will see you all next time.